Good afternoon. So today we're going to be looking at our next lesson, which is solving problems by finding equivalent ratios. Grab your piece of paper and a pencil. You will be looking at examples throughout the video, and then you'll have 3 problems to complete to turn in tomorrow. So get your paper, pencil, and let's get started. I can statements. I can use type diagrams to solve problems when given a ratio between 2 quantities and a change to those quantities that changes the ratio. I can understand the relationship between ratios and fractions. Example 1. Sammy and David were selling water bottles to raise money for new football uniforms. Sammy sold 5 water bottles for every 3 water bottles David sold. Together they sold 160 water bottles. How many did each boy sell? I would also recommend you create a type diagram to help you solve this problem. Please pause the video and try on your own. Alright, so let's look at the solution. Sammy and David, they both selling water bottles to raise money for new football uniforms. Sammy sold 5 water bottles for every 3 water bottles David sold. Together they sold 160 water bottles. How many did each boy sell? So I'm starting out looking with my type diagram with a 5 to 3. So I have actually a ratio of 5 to 3. So now in our problem it actually tells us that there is 160 that they sold together. That's how much they sold together. So then I want to actually combine my pieces of tape to get an all together, because that's what we're looking at, is how many together right now. So when I put them together, I see that I have a total of 8 pieces of tape. These 8 pieces of tape actually equals the 160. So now I want to break down this 160 between the 8 pieces. And in order to do that, I would have to divide my 160 by 8. So 8 into 16 goes 2 times. 2 times 8 gives me 16. I subtract. I bring down my 0. And 8 into 0 goes 0 times. 0 times 8 is 0. And I'm finished. So now I see that each box represents 20. So when I break my boxes back apart and I see that each box represents 20, I can look at now that that Sammy, when he sold the 5 water bottles, he comes out selling a total of 100 water bottles. And then I look at David's 3 pieces of tape to give him selling a total of 60 water bottles. So I'm looking at Sammy sold 100 water bottles to David selling 60 water bottles. Example 2. The ratio of the number of people who own a smartphone to the number of people who own a flip phone is 4 to 3. If 500 more people own a smartphone than a flip phone, how many people own each type of phone? Pause video and try on your own. So let's look at this example and find the solution. The ratio of the number of people who own a smartphone to the number of people who own a flip phone is 4 to 3. If 500 more people own a smartphone than a flip phone, how many people own each type of phone? So I'm looking at smartphone to flip phones. My smartphone is actually 4. My flip phone is 3, which is representing this type diagram. I know that when I'm representing a ratio with a type diagram, that each piece is equal amounts. So then I'm able to look and tell that I have these 2 are actually equal, 3 to 3, leaving me with 1 piece left. So with this 1 piece left, I know that it equals 500 more. So if this one piece equals 500, then all my other pieces actually equals 500 as well, because it is equal pieces. So once I get that figured out and I filled in all of my tape pieces with 500, I can now see that the people owning smartphones is actually 2,000, because I add all 4 pieces of my tape together to get 2,000. And then I can see the people owning a flip phone is 1,500, because I added my 3 pieces together to get 1,500. So the people owning a smartphone is 2,000, to the people owning a flip phone is 1,500. Have ready, turning at beginning of class. Number 1. Miss Johnson and Miss Sipple are folding report cards to send home to parents. The ratio of the number of report cards to Miss Johnson folded to the number of report cards Miss Sipple folded is 2 to 3. It's 2 to 3. At the end of the day, Miss Johnson and Miss Sipple folded a total of 300 report cards. How many did each person fold? Number 2, at a country concert, the ratio of the number of boys to the number of girls is 2 to 7. If there are 250 more girls than boys, how many boys are at the concert? A little hint. Number 1, you're going to work just like we did in example 1. For number 2, you're going to work it like we worked in example 2. Have it ready to turn in tomorrow. So now let's look at example 3. Shelley compared the number of oak trees to the number of maple trees as part of a study about hardwood trees in a woodlot. She counted 9 maple trees to every 5 oak trees. Later in the year, there was a bug problem, and many trees died. New trees were planted to make sure there were the same number of trees as before the bug problem. The new ratio of number of maple trees to the number of oak trees is 3 to 11. After planting new trees, there were 132 oak trees. How many more maple trees were in the woodlot before the bug problem than after the bug problem? Explain. Pause video and try on your own. Okay, look at example 3. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to have got to this solution. First of all, I'm going to start by looking at the after the bug problem. And after the bug problem, I see that I had a ratio of 3 to 11 after the bug problem. Now, after the bug problem, I also see that it tells me there were 132 oak trees. So, when looking at this, my oak trees is actually represented in my 11 here. I'm going to actually want to break down the 132 between these 11. So I want to break down my 11 for my oak trees from 132. I want to break it down to each individual pieces. So I would do that by actually dividing 132 by 11. So 11 into 132, I take 11 and 13 gives me 1. 1 times 11 is 11. I subtract. I bring down. So 11 and 22 gives me 2. 2 times 11 is 22. And I am finished. So now that I see that each piece represents 12. Each piece represents 12. So then I can fill in each piece of my tape with 12. Because remember, again, they're equal size pieces. So I'm actually fill it in this way. So maybe to keep it from zooming in on us so much. So each piece represents 12. So my question is actually asking me how many more maple trees. Well, in this tape diagram, my 3 actually represents my maple trees. So then I'm able to take and look at, for these 3, I would have a total of 36 maple trees. If I want to go back and look at before the bug problem, it was 9 maple trees. So then I would look at that 9 times 12 actually gives me 108. And the reason I'm multiplying it by 12 as well is because each piece represents the same amount. Then I'm able to subtract 36 from 108. To get 72. So there were 72 more maple trees before the bug problem than after. Now, another way to the solution. First, I'm going to represent my ratio before the bug problem 9 to 5. 9 represents my maple trees and 5 represents my oak trees. Second, I'm going to represent my ratio after the bug problem 3 to 11. 3 represents my maple trees and 11 represents my oak trees. Now, once again, I have to get the information out of my problem that I know, which is telling me 132 oak trees after. So once again, I'm still going to actually divide what I know, my information, which is that these 11 equals 132. So I still want to divide 132 by 11. Now, since we already divided that when we was looking at it in a different way previously, I know that 132 divided by 11 gives me 12. So each piece represents 12 because my tape is equal in both of these diagrams. So I'm looking at now that since they are equal, I can see that for my maple trees in the first diagram, since I can see that they are equal pieces, I can look at in my first diagram with my maple trees that these first 3 and these 3 would be equal amounts, both 36. So then I'm just going to look at my 6 that I have extra in my first diagram. And then I can take 6 times 12 to get, I have 12 times 6. To get that I have 72 more maple trees before the bug problem than after. Have ready to turn in at the beginning of class. The school band is comprised of middle school students and high school students, but it always has the same maximum capacity. Last year, the ratio of number of middle school students to number of high school students was 1 to 8. However, this year, the ratio of number of middle school students to number of high school students changed to 2 to 7. If there are 18 middle school students in the band this year, how many fewer high school students are in the band this year compared to last year? Explain. Your little hint. You're going to solve this just like we did in example 3. So have it ready to turn in at the beginning of class tomorrow. Summary. When solving problems in which the ratio between two quantity changes, it is helpful to draw a before tape diagram and an after tape diagram. I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night.